There, now it's
It's my Aunt Lori, my cousin Dixie, cousin Jessica, cousin Jeff, my cousin Aiden, my mama, and my mother. Surviving Hurricane Audrey. Hurricane Audrey was the perfect hurricane. She did what no other hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico has ever done. She took a path straight north and built velocity faster than any other recorded storm. Furthermore, she tripled her speed quicker than any other storm in history, all the while building up a powerful wall of water. Audrey scarred not only the landscape of Cameron Parish, but its residents as well. Yes, the wind created by Audrey was destructive, but it was the water she brought with her that caused the most fatalities. Even now, 56 years later, the survivors who lost so many friends and family reluctantly tell their stories because of all the painful memories. However, many of those stories can be found in the books Remembering Hurricane Audrey and Audrey Remembered. We will first look at Hurricane Audrey's development in the Gulf of Mexico. Next, we will briefly discuss why so many people failed to evacuate safely. And finally, we will look at the devastating effects of the water Audrey brought to Cameron Parish. Let's begin by discussing Hurricane Audrey's origin. On June 25th, 1957, the tropical depression, which would become Hurricane Audrey, formed in the Gulf of Mexico, west of the Yucatan Peninsula. She became a Category 1 on the 26th of June and began to move north at 5 miles per hour. Later that day, Audrey became a Category 2 storm and increased her speed to 15 miles per hour. Hurricane Audrey made landfall as a Category 4 in the early morning hours of June 27th. The eye of Audrey was about 50 miles wide, and she had sustained winds of 145 miles per hour. She also brought with her heavy rain, a 14-foot storm surge, and a 14-foot tidal wave. Now, with all this information, you're probably asking yourself, why didn't these people evacuate such a strong storm? This brings us to our next discussion. There are several reasons why. As I mentioned in the beginning, there has never been a storm like Audrey before and caught everyone off guard, there are several reasons. As I mentioned in the beginning, there had never been a storm like Audrey before and caught everyone off guard, including the Weather Service. This was 1957. Communication was vastly different from today. Televisions were fairly new, especially in the remote area of Cameron. Some longtime residents never planned to leave because they had watched the weather. It was like any other storm they had ever been through. For others that had planned to evacuate, it was predicted that she wouldn't make landfall until sometime that afternoon. Therefore, many residents packed their belongings, planned to leave early that morning. By the time everyone realized that Audrey was a different hurricane, it was too late. People woke up that morning preparing to leave, to only find water in their homes, yards, and roads. They were trapped. Other travelers found their way to the only road exit from Cameron, a pontoon bridge, to find it was inaccessible as well. The storm surge had already come in, and everyone who had not left the night before would now have to ride out Hurricane Audrey. This brings us to our final observation, the deadly waters of Hurricane Audrey. Cameron was on the eastern side of the hurricane, so the winds literally pushed the water ashore, creating a 14-foot storm surge. Cameron Parish is a low, marshy landscape. No natural or man-made barriers, and this allowed the water to push in as far as 25 miles. For the people in Cameron, they were literally in the ocean, riding out the hurricane. They used their attics for shelter until they could no longer. Then, if they were able, they used their roofs for rafts. Many people reported using refrigerators, doors, walls, and even dead animals. With the exception of Cameron Parish, of the Cameron Parish Courthouse, every structure in Cameron Parish was completely destroyed or gutted. The storm surge caused many houses to drift completely off their foundations. One house was even found 5 miles from its foundation. Some residents climbed trees, seeking refuge from the deep storm surge. They had to hold on for hours in 100-mile-per-hour plus winds, enduring flying debris and sharing their trees with numerous creatures, including poisonous snakes. The undertow of the storm surge and 12-foot waves were so strong that many children were being ripped from their parents' arms, while the parents struggled to hold on to them. Survivors said they felt like they were in the middle of the raging ocean, where land had completely just disappeared. In addition to this, Hurricane Audrey had built up a 14-foot tidal wave that crashed ashore. This tidal wave caused so many of the houses to completely break apart, throwing everyone into the water. Survivors who had taken shelter inside the Cameron Parish Courthouse could only watch as the tidal wave came and crashed upon those refugees trying to make their way to the courthouse. No one in Cameron, not even the old-timers, had ever heard of a big tidal wave like Audrey brought with her. There was no past experience on which to base the decision about safety. Most of the survivors floating in the water eventually floated to the Intercoastal Canal, where they were picked up by rescue boats. In the end, the final death toll of Hurricane Audrey will never be known, simply because so many were never found. However, the best estimates are between 500 and 550 perished, including over 100 children. As you can see, Hurricane Audrey was indeed the perfect storm, starting with her formation in the Gulf of Mexico, then into hampering evacuation efforts of the Cameron residents, and finally unleashing the devastating effects of the water she brought with her winds. Many years later, it is still too painful for the residents and for the residents to talk about their survival stories. Most people didn't lose a family member or a friend. They lost numerous family members, especially children and friends, in the span of a day. I would like to close with this poem, written by Jeff Masters after Hurricane Audrey. In 57, she began with a roar. No one knew she was coming ashore. Most people were asleep in bed, not knowing they should have fled. After the fury of the storm's huge eye, families cried for those who did die. Lady Audrey would long be remembered as the fateful day Cameron surrendered. My Aunt Lori, again. My cousin Aiden. My cousin Dixie. My cousin Jessica. Her husband, which is my cousin Jeff. Only by marriage. My mama. And my mother.
You better leave that by marriage.